Gabe here for Smart Fitness. I got a request about someone dealing with upper back issues, especially when they're running. So I thought I would make a video to address that. There's a lot of different ways to look into that type of issue. So we can look at it starting from a postural standpoint. So whether that issue is coming from the top or the bottom of the body, or maybe a combination of both. So we can look at whether there's asymmetry from the top part, which would look something like this, where the lower half of the body stays pretty neutral, but this top part, maybe through the thoracic spine, is kind of hunched or leaning. One side is higher than the other. So that would be more of like a top issue. The other aspect could be maybe it's coming from the bottom, where I have one hip higher than the other, and that could either be elevating, so if my right hip is higher, maybe that's elevating my left shoulder, and that could be contributing to the issue that I'm having from the top of my body. So understanding how our body is resting statically is going to be important to identify how this is occurring, and then after that, then we'll want to look at some tests. So the tests that we can look at could be some form of mobility testing, just to see how certain joints move. In this case, we'll look at the shoulder and the hip. So we can do some shoulder rotation, whether it's like a pec stretch through the door, single arm, both arms, just kind of leaning through a doorway, seeing how rotation feels through the shoulder. We can look how rotation feels through the hip. So there's a bunch of them, but a basic one could be something like a glute stretch on a chair or a stool or something, where we're just rotating through that hip and seeing how that feels. Of course, we'll do both sides. Then we could look at extension. So we can go extension through the pec here. Okay, how does it extend through the shoulder? We can look at hip extension, maybe through a hip flexor stretch. How does the hip feel through extension here? So those are just a few mobility aspects that we can look at just to see if there's any obvious discrepancies between both sides. The next thing that we can look at would be strength, unilateral strength on each side. So for unilateral strength, we're just comparing one side of the body with the other. How does the left side perform and how does the right side perform? So in this case, we can look at some form of external rotation on the shoulder, where we're doing something like this, seeing how that feels. The next thing that we can do is some form of extension, where we're elevating the body, seeing how that feels, making sure that we're not shrugging, that movement is coming through that lower shoulder blade area, not from that upper shoulder blade area where it's shrugging. The next thing we can do is some form of lateral flexion. We can go look into a side plank, compare both sides, seeing how the shoulder and the side of the torso feels. And then we can also compare glute bridges, single leg glute bridges, and seeing how the hamstring and the glutes function, comparing both sides. So looking at unilateral strength is going to be a big important thing when we have discovered some type of asymmetry in the body. Ultimately, we're just trying to bring more symmetry in the body when we realize that there is an issue between the two sides. So after we looked at some form of mobility and some form of unilateral strength, we can decide to go back into mobility, see if that has changed anything, has improved anything, or we can also go into performance and seeing if that has improved anything in our performance. Ultimately, once we've identified that there is an issue, we have to figure out what the root cause is. So if we're having issues in the upper back area when doing certain movements, in this case if we say running, we have to figure out where that root cause is. Sometimes that root cause is some sort of asymmetry in the upper body, so we have to correct that and try to get more symmetrical. Or sometimes the issue is from the lower body, and of course we have to also correct that as well. So ultimately, the more as we start to become more symmetrical, we would like to see some improvement in that upper body area. But of course, there's many different ways to approach it. So as always, I hope that helps. If you have any questions, just let me know.